Hey everybody, I'm going to be making a bunch of YouTube videos around my process and what I do because I tend to get a lot of questions on Instagram from people who want to know things like what kind of brushes do I use, what software do I use, all that kind of stuff. So really quickly, what I use is a Cintiq companion with Photoshop. So that kind of covers that part of it. Really quickly as well, I'm just going to kind of go over the brushes that I use. So brushes. A lot of people will buy brushes. You can buy brushes online for different techniques and such. I don't ever do that, mostly because sorry about that, I had a phone call. Anyway, so brushes. So people buy brushes. I don't buy brushes. The stuff I do is not that complicated. So I tend to just use the ones that I find in Photoshop, and I found there's a lot of good ones that if I edit them just a little bit, they get better. And this one here is the one that I use for almost all the stuff that I draw. That one. And the reason I like it is that it has a bit of tooth to it. As you can see there, it's got a bit of raggedy edges. If I change the settings a little bit, I can make it look a little bit more like a pencil. And I like it better than a really smooth brush. So a really smooth brush is something like this. And you can see here, because of the settings that I have, like I've got some shape dynamic stuff on with the angle jitter. If I turn that down to the defaults for that brush, and in fact if I turn the pen pressure off, you can kind of see what you get. You can't actually. Why is that doing that? Yeah, you get that. So that's kind of the standard brush. Let's get rid of that really quickly. And you know, if you're going to draw something, that's not bad. It's kind of clean looking, kind of boring looking, kind of whatever, you know. So when I was using this one, I didn't love it. So I wanted to make my stuff look like a pencil, and I wanted it to look like some of the other artists that I really liked who work traditionally. You know, people like Scott C, who works in watercolor, and I really love his stuff. So for a while I was trying to make my stuff look more like his through again, changing the settings. Not through actually using watercolors, because that terrifies me, but just changing some of the settings. Like you can use transfer, and if you turn transfer on and you turn the opacity jitter onto pen pressure, and if I say I turn that up and I turn that up, this is the shape dynamics, the angle and roundness jitter. And then if I go into the brush and I increase the spacing, then what I get is a brush like this that has a lot of tooth to it, has some transparency variation to it, and if I set the brush to like 60% opacity and I do this, then I can layer in that. Oops, sorry about that. And that starts to look a little bit more like traditional work, which I kind of like. But I'll get back to the brush that I use all the time, and that is this guy here. And I usually, for I use it in a couple of different ways. I'll use it going on there? There we go. I'll use it for the black outlines. And for that, I'll leave the transfer off, so it gives me this type of a line. Let's just draw the same thing over and over again. It's this guy. And that feels like a pretty good line. So I'll just finish this guy off really fast. I'm not trying to make the greatest looking thing in the world. I just want to show you something. And then what I'll do is, if I'm going to use it for color, what I do is I'll use the color. I'll do it on a different layer, but this is something I'll talk about another time. We'll get into the layers and everything else later. But going back to the brush, what I'll do is I'll increase the spacing on it. So same brush, just more spacing. I'll turn the transfer on. Let's see. Maybe a little bit more spacing. Like that. And that's it. So it's at 100% opacity. And I'll make it bigger. And I'll go in, and that'll be my color. And the reason I do that is it gives it a bit more texture for these big blocks, which I like. But more importantly, I'm not going to clean this up at all. But more importantly, what will happen is when I go in and I layer another color over top of this. So let's say I take a different shade and I want to do some shadows. You see how that's got a bit of grain to it? It starts to feel more natural, more painted. So that is all I do with brushes. That's it.